you're hearing this, it means you got the job, so congrats. I'm supposed to record this message for you just to kind of get you up to speed and teach you the ropes of what you're going to be doing here at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And if anyone here is qualified to teach you, it's me, because I actually worked in that office before you, but that was about a year ago now, and I've since moved up in the corporation. But enough about me, let's start talking about you. The building just underwent a very serious remodel, so things look a lot different than they used to, but as for the job itself, if you applied to a place like this, I'm pretty sure you're already quite familiar with what you're going to be doing. Just keep an eye on the cameras and make sure nobody breaks in. But personally, I don't think you'll have much of a problem with burglars because this place hasn't really been doing that well recently, so, you know, no one's going to break in to see the arcade cabinets, you know what I mean? The big thing to be worried about is actually Freddy and the other animatronics because, well, I'm just going to be honest, they get a little bit freaky at night. You know, they get off stage and they just wander around. So stay out of their way, you should be fine, but I don't know about you, man, but something's off about them. And I'm not just talking about that smell. That's pretty much all I need to tell you. You know, everything else you should figure out on your own. It's not a very complex job. Just be sure to mind that power as well. Yeah, and you're running on 2 double A's back there. But just stay safe. Talk to you tomorrow night. Goodbye.
Sorry about that little intro, but I figured something like that was in order to help kind of set the mood, you know? Five Nights at Freddy's is a game that is very important to me personally, because I was 9 years old when the first game came out, and it was really one of the first things that I ever really got into, aside from maybe like Minecraft. That's right, I was a first wave FNaF kid. One of the worst things about FNaF is that you can't experience it with anyone else. I mean, obviously there's the huge and super passionate fan base that the series has, but that's not what I'm talking about. I mean that the games themselves are all single-player experiences. You know, there's no way to be there in that office with a friend, both surviving the week together.
I see the problem. Oh, do ya?
This is where Five Nights at Freddy's Co-op comes in. It is a Roblox recreation of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 through sister location, plus 2 original experiences of its own, and it remakes everything here as full 3D, free roam, and most importantly, co-op compatible. I'm mostly going to be focusing on FNaFs 1 through 3 in this video, because FNaF Co-op is in the process of revamping all the experiences that it provides, and the only ones that have been revamped up to this point are the first 3 FNaF games, although the other ones are a work in progress right now. So let's do a bit of a deep dive into Five Nights at Freddy's Co-op and decide whether or not it's the best way to play Five Nights at Freddy's. Something that FNaF Co-op does when a night starts is that it doesn't. Unlike most other FNaF-esque games, the nights don't automatically start with you in the office and with the clock ticking towards 6. Nights in FNaF Co-op start with you spawning at the entrance to whatever location you're going to be doing the night shift at, and you have to walk to the office to begin the night. This gives you a chance to take in the atmosphere of whatever game you're playing in a peaceful manner, and kind of gives you a feel for what these places could look like while they're open, just without the actual customers. You get to go pretty much wherever you want, and you even get to see the animatronics performing up on stage, which is such a rarity in the actual games, which really comes as a surprise when you consider that these games are pretty much just set at Chuck E. Cheese. You'd expect to see a lot more of the animatronics doing animatronic things. The most that we do see in the actual games typically just comes in the form of 8-bit minigames. The night will only begin when you go to the office, at which point all the lights in the building will go out and the night will begin, giving you, the player, the choice of when you want to sit down and actually tackle the challenge. But before you actually start the night, you may want to prepare a bit at one of the game's newest additions, the shop. The shop in FNaF Co-op comes in 2 forms, in-match and out-of-match, and you can use money that you earn from surviving nights and completing tasks to buy upgrades, equipment, and items to help you in your future endeavors. The in-match shop sells you smaller items and equipment that can be very useful, but regardless of whether you survive or not, will be lost at the end of the night, and the items it contains are as follows. Watches. These will display the current time to your HUD so that way you can see what time it is and how close you are to beating the night from anywhere in the building instead of just at the actual computer screen in the office. These cost $5, and 5 of them are available for sale each night. Traps. These can be placed anywhere and will stun any animatronics that walk into them for a couple of seconds, and they can be really useful in defending a location and fortifying it a bit, and there's 2 of them for sale and they cost $100. The taser is pretty much just an offensive version of the trap, because instead of placing it down, you can shoot an animatronic with it, and it does pretty much the same thing. It stuns them for a couple seconds, and just the same as the traps, 2 of them are for sale and for $100 a piece. These are the 3 items that are universally available on each of the 3 games we'll be talking about today, but there are also a few that are exclusive to 1 or 2 of the games. On both Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2, you can buy the Signal Jammer, which will disable an animatronic for the first hour of the night, and it costs $200 and only one of them is for sale. On Five Nights at Freddy's 1, you can buy 1 extra percent of power for $10 up to 10 times, allowing for a maximum starting power of 110% power, which can really go a long way if you think about it. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 has Sanity Pills, which will permanently disable one of the Phantom animatronics for the entirety of the night, and it only costs $50, but only one of them is for sale. Finally, and also on Five Nights at Freddy's 3, are oxygen tanks, which you can buy these for the office, and they will have a chance to automatically fix any ventilation errors that pop up, and they cost $75 but can only be bought once. But these are all just little small items to help you get through the night. Where are all the big perks at? Well, those are all in the out-of-match shop. First up is Flashlight, and this gives you a flashlight, pretty self-explanatory, and it costs $100. Faster walk speed makes your walk speed faster, because your walk speed is already pretty fast by default before the night starts than after hitting 6 o'clock, but during the actual horror survival part of the night, your speed is slowed down to make it harder to avoid animatronics if you're roaming outside of the office, and this perk bumps it back up a little bit for $200. Camera light is another pretty self-explanatory one. It upgrades the camera flashlight, and it costs $250. Faster janitor tasks makes your janitor tasks go faster if that's what you're playing as, and it costs $300, and we'll get a bit more in depth into it later. For FNaF 1, you can buy lower power consumption, which will decrease the amount of power that drains just throughout the night by closing doors, using lights and the cameras, and it costs $300. For FNaF 2, you can buy faster music box wind, which will decrease the amount of time it takes you to wind the music box back up, and then also you can buy a lower music box drain, which will increase the amount of time it takes for the box to wind down on its own, each of these costing $300. FNaF 3 has quite a few. It has less camera errors, less audio errors, and less ventilation errors, and each of these will decrease the rate at which their respective errors will appear throughout your nights, and they all cost $300. Each of these perks can then be upgraded for extra money, and this will make their effects stronger. So there's all these perks and upgrades to buy, but how in the world are you going to afford all of it, especially working on a Freddy Fazbear paycheck? Well, that's where all the jobs come into play. There are 4 different jobs, or roles as they're called in game, in Five Nights at Freddy's Co-op, and each of them will have different abilities, meaning you'll be able to start with different equipment, or get the opportunity to make some extra spending cash over the course of the night. The same as the perks, these can be upgraded, although I don't think this does anything at the moment, and it's just something to sink money into for when the feature eventually gets added, and the jobs also all have different colored uniforms, so you can easily distinguish who's playing as what just by looking at your team. Night Guard is just the default job, and it has no bells and whistles whatsoever. Your only objectives are to clock in, survive the night, and then leave. It's just a perfectly vanilla FNaF experience, and the uniform is also a very classic FNaF purple. Janitor is the next job up, and it costs $50 to purchase, and it is the moneymaker role, because when playing as janitor, you will receive a series of maintenance tasks to perform throughout the building over the course of the night for extra money. You could have to do anything from cleaning up and setting the tables, to mopping the floors, to just fixing arcade cabinets. It doesn't matter, it's all your responsibility. Mind you, you have to do all this while the night is currently active, and the animatronics are out and about wandering around. So this can get very hectic, especially on later nights where the animatronics just move a lot more. So it's usually good to have someone stay in the office, and then someone play as janitor and go out and rack up some extra cash, because the money you get from this is very lucrative. Again, this is easily the best way in the game to make money. And as for the janitor's outfit, they wear gray. Engineer costs $250 and is kind of like the defensive role of the game. They spawn with a trap, and they can repair generator malfunctions more quickly than the other roles. Their whole job is to keep the office and the rest of the security crew operating at maximum capacity, and they wear an orange outfit. Lastly is Policeman for $300, and this is pretty much just an upgraded version of the Night Guard role. Their only real ability is that they spawn with a taser, which is one of the strongest items of the game, which makes them a very, very powerful asset on the team to at least have one of to defend the office as a last resort. And as the policeman name implies, they have a blue outfit. These different roles for the most part provide pretty minor tweaks to the overall gameplay experience, with the exception being the janitor role. Playing as janitor puts the focus more on the free roam aspect of the game, which can be very, very tense, especially if you have a task in the room like, say, the backstage area or the kitchen where there's only one way in, and if an animatronic wanders in there, you're pretty much screwed. As for the actual layouts of the map, they're all very, very close, with FNaF 3 in particular just being a one-to-one of the actual game that it's based off of. FNaF 1 and 2 both have slight changes made to the layouts of the maps, with the first of which being a new little lobby entrance area that you spawn inside of, which can even be seen on the cameras with the new camera, Camera 00. Both games also have a new backstage area added, which the FNaF 1 backstage area has just now been labeled the employees only area, and then the actual backstage is behind the stage, same as in FNaF 2, and this is where the generator will be located if that ever fails and you need to go and fix it. You can also enter the kitchens of FNaF 1 and 2, with FNaF 1's kitchen famously being the room where the camera was broken so you could never see what was inside of it, and FNaF 2 didn't even have one on the map, which that was one of that game's biggest oversights, was that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza doesn't have a kitchen, so like where are they making the pizza from? And the new Five Nights at Freddy's 2 kitchen is located directly to the right of the stage where the toy animatronics perform. The kitchens are locked by default, but there's a key in the actual security office that you can grab to get into them, but you need to be playing as a janitor to grab the key, meaning that you need to have someone on your team playing as a janitor to get into that kitchen. But all this stuff doesn't matter if the game isn't fun, and thankfully it is really fun, and personally I think it can even be better than the original Five Nights at Freddy's games at times. There are two main ways to play Five Nights at Freddy's co-op, and I like to refer to them as Modern and Classic respectively. Modern takes advantage of the game being set in a 3D environment, so you can walk around the office and even free roam around the whole building if you want, but the animatronics will stay on their routes from the original games. For instance, in FNaF 1, Bonnie can only go down the left hall, Chica can only go down the right hall. Basically, if you can avoid the animatronics routes as they were, then you're free to go around the whole building as you wish. Classic, on the other hand, makes the gameplay much closer to the original games, because in the offices of FNaF 1, 2, and 3, there is a chair that you can interact and sit down in, and this will make the game play like the originals, where you are stuck in one spot and you have to pan the screen from left to right to interact with the different mechanics of the game. You can play the game like this if you're a purist, or this can also be easier on solo just because it can save you the time of walking around, especially in a game like FNaF 3 where the office is a bit more spread out. There are also some smaller changes that just help the game play a bit better in this different format, like for instance Freddy in FNaF 1 has been reworked. In the original Five Nights at Freddy's, Freddy cannot move backwards, so he will move off the stage and then into the party room, then to the bathrooms, and then down the right hall, and once he's in that right hall corner, he's there forever, you know. The only way you can keep him from getting you is by cam stalling him at that point. Well, that and obviously closing the door on him. In FNaF Co-op, Freddy will not just sit in the corner or sit at the door forever once he reaches that point like he does in the original game, because he gets to the corner and then he will move to the door to attack like another animatronic, like, you know, Bonnie or Chica does, but then he can also be waited out like those other animatronics. So, after you wait him out and he's at the door, he will move back to the beginning of the right hallway, and that becomes his new loop that he goes on, which just makes it better because obviously as a free roam game, if you had an animatronic camping one of the doors forever, that's just bad game design because now you can't go out through that way. Another change is in FNaF 3, and this only applies to the modern style of gameplay because in Classic, again, it's identical to the original game, but when you're actually walking around the office, the repair console is a completely different terminal on the other side of the room from the camera system, so this makes it a bigger commitment to go over there and fix your systems, and just puts you at more risk for Springtrap getting you if you have to fix your systems, which I think adds to the scariness of it. Camera flashlights have been added to FNaFs 1 and 3 instead of just being in FNaF 2 like they were in the original games, which this is a really useful feature because the maps themselves, especially FNaF 3, seem a lot darker on their own than they were in the original games. Like, there is very, very little just ambient natural lighting in these games, so having the camera flashlights can make it easier to spot the animatronics, particularly Springtrap because he likes to hide in the dark. The difficulty is also increased a bit differently here, because as the nights go on, not only do the animatronics move faster, as in they get more movement opportunities, like they get the chance to move faster, but they will literally, physically move faster. On night 1, they're pretty much just meandering from place to place, but on the later nights, they're moving just as fast, if not faster than Foxy, and this really comes into play if you're out doing janitor tasks. So you really need to have a good idea of where they're at and how safe you are to commit to doing a task, and this is where having a good crew of people on the cameras comes into play. Each of the games also has a generator that has a chance of malfunctioning throughout the night, and in FNaFs 1 and 2, they're in the backstage areas, and then FNaF 3, it's located on Cam 6. Near the arcade machines. If a generator starts malfunctioning, you have a short window of time to go to it and fix it before it explodes, and will shift the game into what is called the hunt mode. The hunt can be triggered by a couple of different things. For instance, it can be caused by the generator exploding, as we just discussed. In FNaF 1, it can be caused by running out of power, and then in all the games, same as generators, it can be caused by an animatronic jump scaring the office while nobody is inside. Once the hunt is triggered, the whole establishment will black out, and a distorted version of Shadow Bonnie's theme will play over the loudspeakers, and you'll have to the end of this little jingle to find some place to hide. Once the jingle is up, the animatronics will begin the hunt, and no longer restricted to their normal paths, they are free to roam wherever they want to try and find you. This is pretty much FNaF Co-op's substitute for the FNaF 1 blackout sequence, where once the power goes out, you have a short window of time to survive a little bit longer to try and clutch out that win, which obviously wouldn't work in this 3D free roam environment because while Freddy's playing his jingle in the left door, you could just go out the right door and leave, which would not work. So I'm glad that they have the substitute in as something that fits better, and that they've added it to the other games as well because it's really cool. Nowhere is 100% safe, so this is where it's a good idea to use your items like traps and tasers to try and hold out until the night ends. But this also becomes more difficult as the nights go on because the roaming speed of the animatronics is the same as their normal movement speed during the night, so it's way easier to hold out and hide somewhere on night 1 than it is on night 6, for example, because the animatronics are going to take way less time to find you on night 6. And when an animatronic spots you, they will scream at you and start chasing you down faster than you can run away, and this happens regardless of what night you're on. If they see you, you're basically dead. Surviving the hunt for a long period of time is pretty much impossible, but if you just need to eke out a little bit more time to win, then it's definitely doable, and it feels very good to clutch up, hiding in the dark in some dank corner of the establishment. I think one of the biggest areas where it could be argued that FNaF Co-op falls short in comparison to the original games is in the atmosphere department, because overall it isn't as creepy as the actual games, that's just across the board, but I think the game that suffers from this the most is FNaF 3. The animatronics in this game have idle animations that they'll play while they're standing around, which I don't think is as scary already on its own. Plus you can see them walking from place to place, which might be tense, but I definitely don't think it's as scary as it was in the originals, where the only times you ever saw them move was in the jump scares. All other movement that they performed during the nights was covered by camera static, and you just kind of had to fill in the gaps in your head, which was way scarier. I think the animatronic that suffers the most from this is Springtrap, because he's terrifying, but just all the extra animation is a huge detriment, especially when he's on the cameras. You know, Springtrap is FNaF 3's big gimmick. He's the only real animatronic, the only one who can kill you, and thus the only one who you really need to keep track of, and the entire game was designed around that fact. Fazbear's Fright, being a horror attraction, is already a very dark and cluttered environment to set a game in. That, on top of the sickly green color scheme that permeates the entirety of FNaF 3, helps to hide Springtrap, because obviously that matches the green, moldy look of the suit that he's wearing. The darkness, the color schemes, the camera static, the lack of actual movement on the cameras, all of this compounds to serve the purpose of hiding Springtrap as he makes the way to the office. And unlike nearly every other character from the first 3 games, Springtrap is almost never front and center on the cameras. He's always hiding in some dark corner or up against the walls. He's always hiding from you. FNaF 3's scariest moments were when you'd get jump scared by a phantom, or maybe you had an unlucky error, but you'd go and fix it, you'd return to the cameras, and you'd lose track of Springtrap. And you would scour the whole map, top to bottom, looking for him, and just no luck, you couldn't find him. And then you flip the cameras down, and that's when you see him on the other side of that window, staring at you, and you know you're cooked. FNaF Co-op has no opportunity for moments like these because Springtrap is always tweaking out on the cameras. He's super easy to track, which defeats the whole gameplay purpose of FNaF 3. And this really sucks because the FNaF 3 map is, like, really dark. Like, it's nearly pitch black dark. Obviously, pre-rendered images like the original FNaF games are built out of are easier to use to curate scares and positioning for the animatronics on the cameras, but there's a great opportunity here for them to utilize the darkness in tangent with the new camera flashlights that have been added into FNaF 3 to kind of make up for that with the fact that you'd still have to look for him in the dark if they just had him standing still. But the fact he's so animated and lively looking, which really doesn't fit because he's a corpse in a mascot suit, really kind of takes the oomph, the wind out of the sails of FNaF 3, which I'm already quite a big fan of FNaF 3. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but this kind of sinks it for me. As for the actual gameplay of these games, it's just FNaF, and if you're watching this video, I know you're already familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's, so I don't want to waste your time explaining it. Basically, use cameras, use lights, use flashlight, use mask, wind a music box, reboot systems, use audio lure, survive. And that's pretty much about it. FNaF Co-op is a great reimagining of the first couple FNaF games that stays very true to the source material where it matters, but tweaks things to fit this new format better. And I think I might actually prefer playing FNaF Co-op over those actual first couple FNaF games because, sure, it's not as scary, but as an actual gameplay experience, I find it much more fun. It's all about really mentioning the game's namesake feature, the co-op multiplayer, because you can play each of these games solo, but you can also play them with up to 5 people normally, or up to 8 people if you buy the Game Pass to make your lobbies bigger. Sure, this reduces the horror aspect of it even further, but it replaces it with more of a chaotic energy that's a lot of fun, especially on those later nights where the animatronics are just straight up relentless. You can have your people, your team, split up the workload, so you can have someone on cameras, someone on left door, someone on right door, etc. And there's a lot of camaraderie there, and it's a great team exercise that feels very fulfilling to overcome, especially again on those later nights where it's very difficult. I think FNaF Co-op is just straight up outstanding, and the best part is that it's all free. So this is easily one of my favorite games on Roblox, which isn't a very high bar because there's a lot of slop on Roblox. And that's even just mentioning the first 3 FNaF games, because those are the only ones that have been revamped. I haven't even talked about 4, or Sister Location, or the original minigames, but I plan on returning to those once the big revamp updates have been launched for those, so stay tuned and look forward to that, because I'm excited for that. But it doesn't matter if you're going to be playing it solo or co-op, I highly recommend you check it out. But one of the big reasons I'm so fond of this game is because of what it represents for me personally, because just over a year ago, this was the first game that I played for this channel, so this is a bit of an anniversary project for me. So, to think I've come so far in just a year, it's amazing. Thank you so much for watching, as always, peace out and God bless, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, cause I got it like that. Flow so smooth like I got it on tap. Yeah, and I'ma say it be a good night while I'm on my Yingling, while I'm drinking Bud Light. Can you get it when you miss